Photography looks like a dream job until you actually meet the clients. Behind every stunning shot is a professional dealing with pure, unadulterated madness. We aren't talking about simple picky brides here. We mean clients demanding the photographer move a skyscraper or change the sunset because it was too orange. From digital soul transplants to lawsuits over the weather, these stories reveal a shocking level of entitlement. Here are 55 complaints that will make you question our entire species. 1. Entitlement often starts in the editing suite, where some clients expect a total physical transformation. One photographer shared a story about a bride who demanded her entire jawline be restructured and her waist reduced by 4 inches in every single shot. After 30 hours of meticulous work, the bride had the audacity to file a formal complaint. Her reason? She said the photos didn't look like her anymore and were way too edited. What exactly did she expect? You can't ask for a digital soul transplant and then complain that you don't recognize the person in the mirror. 2. A street photographer was once confronted by a man who complained that he was captured in the background of a shot while eating a hot dog. The man demanded the photographer delete the photo because it was a violation of his dietary privacy. He was worried his fitness coach would see the photo on Instagram and find out he cheated on his meal plan. It is amazing how people think they have a right to total invisibility in a public park just because they cannot stick to a diet. Would you ever hunt down a photographer for catching you with a snack? 3. A fashion brand scheduled a sunrise shoot on a freezing beach in January, then complained the model looked tired. They accused the photographer of failing to create a warm atmosphere while the model's lips were literally turning blue from the wind. They wanted a tropical summer look in sub-zero conditions without paying for a studio. It is peak entitlement to subject people to miserable weather and then get angry when the photos reflect reality. Why do clients expect cameras to function like heaters? 4. Lighting is everything in this business, but apparently, the sun is just too much for some people to handle. A mother of the bride complained that the golden hour photos were too orange and that the sun made everyone look like they had a tan they didn't earn. She demanded the photographer desaturate the literal sun in every single frame. Does anyone else feel like some clients just want to complain about the laws of nature? Have you ever dealt with someone who tried to speak to the manager of the solar system? Tell me your craziest story in the comments. 5. The word exposure is a massive trigger for most professionals, and for a very good reason. An influencer with barely 500 followers reached out to a high-end wedding photographer asking for a free 8-hour shoot. The catch? She promised to tag them in a story that would disappear in 24 hours. When the photographer politely declined, the influencer went on a rant about how they were killing her brand. It is truly wild how people think a shout-out to a bunch of bots pays for a mortgage and $5,000 of camera gear. 6. You would think common sense applies to clothing, but you would be wrong. A family showed up to a lush forest photo session wearing nothing but neon green tracksuits. Naturally, they looked like floating heads in the final gallery because they blended perfectly with the foliage. Instead of blaming their questionable fashion choices, they blamed the photographer for not changing the color of the entire forest to make them pop. They literally expected someone to recolor 1,000 trees just because they wanted to look like high-visibility tennis balls during their hike. 7. Dealing with kids is hard, but expecting a photographer to be a toddler hypnotist is next level. One father lost his mind because his 2-year-old was crying in the photos after being skipped on a nap and forced into a wool sweater. He claimed the photographer didn't have a funny enough face to keep the kid entertained and demanded a refund for the emotional distress of seeing his child unhappy. Do you think parents are getting way too soft these days? 8. The raw file debate is a classic, but this specific case takes the cake. A client demanded every single one of the 3,000 unedited shots from a 4-hour event, including the ones where people had their eyes closed or were mid-sneeze. They argued that, since they paid for the time, they owned every single click of the shutter. When told that raw files are unfinished products, the client threatened to sue for theft of personal property. It is like going to a five-star restaurant and demanding the chef give you the raw chicken and the scraps from the trash. 9. Breaking up is hard to do, but making it the photographer's problem is just weird. A woman called her wedding photographer just 3 days after the honeymoon to ask if they could remove the groom from every single photo. Apparently, she found out he was cheating, and she wanted a wedding album that looked like she just married herself in a very expensive dress. When the photographer said that would take weeks of work and cost extra, she screamed that they were being insensitive to her trauma. Talk about a messy and expensive way to start a divorce proceeding. 10. We live in a world of instant gratification, but some people take it to the extreme. A photographer finished a 10-hour wedding at midnight and received an angry email at 4 in the morning asking why the gallery wasn't uploaded yet. The client claimed they wanted to post the photos while the wedding was still trending on their social circle. They actually suggested the photographer should have edited the photos in the car on the way home. Is social media clout really worth ruining someone's sleep? Would you ever demand a professional work 20 hours straight for your feed? 11. Real estate photographers are not housekeepers, but some agents refuse to accept that. One pro arrived at a listing only to find a sink full of dirty dishes and laundry everywhere. After delivering clean, professional shots, the agent complained that the house looked cluttered. They actually wanted the photographer to digitally remove every single piece of trash and fold the virtual laundry for free. It is a camera, not a cleaning service. If you live in a pigsty, your house is going to look like one on Zillow regardless of the lens. 12. A high-powered executive once ordered a headshot but sent back the final edit with a list of demands that would baffle a plastic surgeon. He wanted his gray hair turned jet black, his wrinkles deleted, and his double chin completely erased. When the photographer finished, the man complained that he looked like a totally different person. Well, no kidding, Greg. You asked to look 30 when you are clearly pushing 60. Why do people think a LinkedIn profile should look like a filtered high school yearbook? 13. Newborn photography is a test of patience, but some parents have zero chill. A couple complained because their 3-day-old baby would not stop crying or hold a tiny basketball for a photo. They blamed the studio for being too warm, even though it was set to 80 degrees specifically for the baby's comfort. They actually requested a refund because the infant did not behave like a paid actor. Do you think some people forget that babies are actual humans and not just props for an Instagram feed? 14. Pet owners can be the most entitled of them all. A woman brought her hyperactive husky for a portrait and refused to use a leash, then complained when the dog was not perfectly centered in every frame. She expected the photographer to use a dog whistle or some secret psychic power to make the animal sit still. When the final shots showed a blur of fur, she claimed the equipment was defective. It is honestly hilarious how some people think photographers are also professional animal trainers. 15. Travel photographers deal with the strangest expectations from tourists. One man complained that a professional wildlife guide did not make the lions roar on command for a photo. He argued that for the price of the safari, the animals should have been more cooperative and looked directly into his lens. He literally wanted the photographer to go out there and poke a predator just for the sake of a cool shot. Some people really think nature is just a theme park designed for their personal entertainment. 16. Food photography is an art, but some chefs are impossible to please. A restaurant owner complained that the steam coming off a hot steak looked too ghostly and demanded it be edited to look more delicious. The photographer tried to explain that steam is literally just vapor, but the chef insisted it was a lighting failure. He wanted the steam to have more texture and personality. How do you give personality to water molecules? Seriously, have you ever met someone who tried to micromanage the laws of thermodynamics? 17. Some people believe photographers can move buildings. A client complained that a high-rise was blocking the sunset in their architectural shoot and asked the photographer to move the building 5 feet to the left in post-production. When told that would require rebuilding the entire background from scratch, the client called them uncreative and lazy. It is mind-blowing how people think digital editing is as simple as clicking a button and moving a literal skyscraper. The level of spatial delusion here is absolutely off the charts. 18. In the world of boudoir, confidence is key, but some clients project their insecurities onto the pro. A woman complained that her shadow on the wall looked too menacing and accused the photographer of trying to make her look like a villain. In reality, it was just a standard artistic shadow created by the studio lighting she requested. She demanded a full reshoot because the wall did not look friendly enough. Imagine being so offended by your own silhouette that you demand to speak to a manager. 19. School photographers are the unsung heroes of the industry, but parents are their worst nightmare. One mother complained that her son's hair was messy in his yearbook photo, despite the fact that he had been playing football at recess right before the shoot. She blamed the photographer for not having a comb and hairspray on hand for 300 kids. She actually expected a stranger to provide a full salon service for a $20 portrait package. Is it just me, or are parents getting way too demanding lately? 20. An aspiring model once booked a street-style session and then complained that there were cars on the road. She was furious that the photographer could not stop traffic in the middle of Manhattan to get a clean shot of her walking across the street. Vanna claimed it was the photographer's job to coordinate with the city to clear the block for her 30-minute session. The ego required to think the police are going to shut down Times Square for your outfit of the day is truly legendary. 21. A concert photographer once received a scathing review from a front-row fan who claimed his camera lens was too shiny and distracted her from the music. She actually demanded a refund for her ticket because the reflection of the stage lights off his equipment ruined her vibe. Imagine paying hundreds of dollars for a show and then blaming the guy documenting the magic for being too visible. It is like going to a movie and complaining that the screen is too bright. Some people just want to be miserable in high definition. 22. Product photography is a nightmare when the client does not understand how light works. An entrepreneur once complained that a red lipstick looked slightly different on her laptop than it did on her phone. She accused the photographer of using the wrong color of red in the air. When told about screen calibration, she suggested the photographer should fly to her house and fix her settings manually. Do you think customers are becoming too tech illiterate for their own good? How do you explain physics to someone who just wants to argue? 23. Drone pilots deal with the weirdest sky-high demands. A homeowner once filed a complaint because a drone taking neighborhood shots did not capture the birds in a perfect V formation over his house. He claimed it looked sloppy and made the area seem less prestigious. He honestly expected the pilot to whistle at the geese or wait 6 hours for nature to cooperate with his real estate listing. People really think a remote control gives you dominion over every living creature in the sky. 24. At a corporate gala, an intern's mother called the photographer to complain that her daughter was not in any of the keynote photos. The girl was actually working the coat check in a different room, but the mother insisted she should have been photoshopped into the front row next to the CEO to boost her resume. The level of delusional parenting here is absolutely staggering. Is it just me, or are people starting to view professional photography as a tool for creating a fake life? Would you ever lie about your career for a LinkedIn post? 25. Engagement shoots are usually sweet, but one groom was a total nightmare. He complained that the diamond in the ring looked smaller in the photos than it did in the jewelry store. He actually accused the photographer of using a wide-angle lens specifically to make him look poor. He demanded the diamond be digitally enlarged by 30%, so his friends would be jealous on Facebook. It is a sad day when your insecurity is so loud that you want to physically alter your own bank account via Photoshop. 26. Action sports are all about the moment, but you cannot please everyone. A soccer dad complained that the photographer missed his son's goal because he was busy taking a photo of the other team scoring. He argued that since he was a paying customer, the camera should only be pointed at his kid for the entire 90 minutes. He did not care about the game or the other players. He just wanted a private paparazzi for a 10-year-old's Saturday morning scrimmage. The entitlement in youth sports is getting truly out of hand. 27. Graduation ceremonies are chaotic, but one parent took it to another level. She complained that the photographer did not get a clear shot of her daughter's face while she was walking across the stage. The reason? The daughter was wearing a mask, a hat, and looking at her phone the entire time. The mother demanded the photographer find a way to see through the phone or edit a smile onto her face. At what point do we admit that a camera cannot capture what is not actually happening in reality? 28. Fitness photography often involves a lot of sweat, but one gym influencer was not having it. She complained that her muscles did not look defined enough after a 2-hour workout. She blamed the shadows for being too honest and asked for a full digital body sculpt. She wanted the photographer to add abs that she clearly did not have and remove all the sweat from a gym shoot. Why even go to the gym if you are just going to have a guy in an office build your body with a computer mouse? 29. Interior designers are notoriously picky, but this was next level. A designer complained that the natural sunlight coming through the window was too yellow and clashed with the cool-toned pillows on the sofa. She asked if the photographer could go outside and hold up a giant blue sheet over the sun to change the color of the day. When he laughed, she reported him for being unprofessional. Some people have so much money and so little logic that they think the sun is just a lamp you can adjust. 30. Holiday photos with Santa are a recipe for disaster. One mother complained that the Santa at the mall did not look jolly enough in the final print. She claimed his beard looked slightly crooked and demanded a reshoot with a more authentic-looking saint. The guy had been sitting there for 8 hours with screaming kids, but she expected a miracle. Why are people so obsessed with a perfect holiday photo that they lose their own humanity? Is the perfect Christmas card really worth making a stranger's life miserable? 31. A car enthusiast once lost his mind over a professional shoot of his modified sports car. He complained that the asphalt on the public road looked too gritty and cheap next to his expensive wheels. He actually demanded the photographer digitally pave the entire street with smooth black marble in every single photo. When he was told that would take weeks of work, he accused the pro of trying to make his car look like it was in a low-income neighborhood. It is wild how some people think a camera can fix the local infrastructure and the city budget. 32. A landscape photographer once had a client complain that the Grand Canyon looked too dusty in the final prints. This person actually asked if there was a way to edit out the haze so the colors would look more like a saturated postcard from the 1970s. They literally wanted to remove the atmosphere from one of the largest holes in the ground on the planet. It is fascinating how people visit a natural wonder and then get upset when it actually looks like nature instead of a computer screensaver. Why do we even travel if we just want everything to look like a filter? 33. In the world of corporate headshots, the level of vanity is unmatched. One executive complained that his ears looked too symmetrical in his portrait and demanded one be edited to look slightly larger so he would appear more approachable. He was convinced that being too perfect made him look untrustworthy to his investors. This might be the first time in history a photographer was asked to make someone look more flawed on purpose. Do you think being too symmetrical is actually a problem, or is this guy just overthinking his own face? 34. Fashion shoots are all about the vibe, but one model took it way too far. She complained that the wind was blowing her hair in the wrong direction and blamed the photographer for not positioning the outdoor fan correctly. The problem? There was no fan. They were standing on a cliff in the middle of a literal gale. She actually expected him to control the wind currents of the Atlantic Ocean to keep her bangs perfectly in place. Some people really believe that being a photographer also makes you the master of the 4 elements. 35. At a high-end birthday party, a socialite complained that there were too many photos of people laughing with their mouths open. She claimed it looked unrefined and demanded the photographer go through 500 images and close everyone's mouth using digital editing. She basically wanted a gallery of people looking like they were at a funeral instead of a celebration. Why do people hire photographers to capture memories and then get angry when the photos actually show people having a good time? Is a fake smile really better than a real laugh? 36. Maternity sessions are usually emotional, but one mom-to-be was strictly business. She complained that her pregnancy glow was not bright enough and asked the photographer to make her skin literally radiate light in post-production. She wanted to look like a divine being coming down from the heavens, rather than a woman in her third trimester. When the photographer delivered a realistic and beautiful gallery, she filed a complaint saying she looked too human. It is truly bizarre how social media has convinced people they should look like glowing aliens during pregnancy. 37. A realtor once complained that a house looked too big in the wide-angle photos. This is usually a compliment, but she was worried the buyers would be disappointed when they saw the actual tiny living room. She demanded the photographer shrink the rooms in the photos to manage expectations. It is the only time in history a real estate agent asked for a house to look worse. Honestly, is it better to be honest and lose the sale, or trick people into a showing and face the consequences later? 38. A startup founder once hired a pro to shoot his new line of luxury watches but complained that the glass was too reflective. He could see the studio lights in the curve of the crystal and claimed it made the watch look like it was made of cheap plastic. No matter how many filters the photographer used, the guy was not happy. He literally wanted a transparent material to have zero reflections while being hit with 1,000 watts of light. This is what happens when people skip basic science class and start a business instead. 39. Food bloggers are a special breed of entitled. One influencer complained that her ice cream melted during a 3-hour outdoor shoot in the middle of a Florida summer. She blamed the photographer for not having a portable freezer that could keep the dessert frozen while also being under hot studio lamps. She expected the laws of physics to freeze in place just so she could get the perfect shot of a melting cone. At some point, you just have to accept that dairy and 90-degree heat are not a winning combination. 40. Imagine being so delusional that you think a photographer controls the literal rotation of the Earth. A couple once demanded a 50% discount because the clouds moved in during their sunset session on the beach. They claimed the photographer should have predicted the weather and provided artificial lighting that looked exactly like a tropical sunset. Never mind the fact that they had already refused the backup studio option 3 times. Some people really believe a camera lens is a magic wand that can override the atmosphere and the laws of physics. 41. Product photography is a disaster when a client ignores basic contrast. One owner sent white towels and demanded a pure white background for a clean look. They were furious when the towel edges became invisible, accusing the pro of being incompetent for not making white pop against white without any shadows. They essentially wanted a new color spectrum to fix their own terrible design choice. It is wild how people think a camera creates magic where the laws of physics simply do not exist. 42. At a luxury wedding, a guest confronted the photographer mid-ceremony for blocking her view. She argued her iPhone social media coverage was just as vital as the official album and demanded he move. It is mind-blowing that someone would prioritize a blurry TikTok over the paid professional documenting the day. Why do people value a low-quality post over actual memories? Is a grainy social clip really worth sabotaging the couple's professional gallery? Tell me if you have ever seen a guest go this far. 43. A beauty influencer complained that her high-resolution images were far too sharp. She was horrified to see actual skin texture and pores, accusing the photographer of using a lens specifically designed to make her look old. She demanded a full refund unless every inch of her face was blurred into a smooth plastic surface. Why are we so afraid of looking human? Do you think filters have permanently destroyed our perception of what a face is supposed to look like in the real world? 44. During a corporate party, a CEO complained the photographer missed the exact second he caught a grape in his mouth. This happened while the pro was across the hall, shooting the actual guest of honor. The CEO insisted on a 360-degree field of vision at all times. Some people hire a human and get upset when they find out he does not have 8 eyes or a built-in teleportation device. It is a camera. not a global surveillance satellite designed for your snacks. 45. An Airbnb owner complained her neighborhood looked too lived in. She wanted the photographer to tell every neighbor to hide their trash cans and move their cars for a more secluded look. When he refused, she claimed he was sabotaging her business. It is hilarious that people think a photography fee includes being a neighborhood dictator. Would you ever ask your neighbors to move their personal property for a photo? How far is too far when it comes to a real estate listing? 46. We all have that one relative who is a bit of a ghost, but this is beyond ridiculous. A client sent a blurry photo of their late grandfather taken on a flip phone in 2004 and demanded he be added to the high-resolution family portrait. When the photographer explained that pixels and lighting simply don't work that way, the client accused them of being lazy and disrespectful to the dead. They actually wanted a professional to manifest a human being out of thin air for a $20 tip. It is truly wild how people think Photoshop is some kind of supernatural portal. 47. A wildlife enthusiast complained that a professional's shutter noise ruined his spiritual connection with a park squirrel. He claimed the clicking was animal harassment and demanded the photographer leave the public area immediately. The pro was using a silent electronic shutter, but the guy was so determined to be offended that he imagined a sound just to start a fight. Some people truly have too much free time. Have you ever encountered someone who was offended by a noise that did not even exist? 48. A dance mom complained her daughter was on the far left of a group shot with 60 other kids. She argued that because her daughter was the most talented, she deserved the center spot next to the instructor. She actually expected the photographer to know her daughter's skill level just by looking at her. The ego required to think a photographer is also a talent scout is legendary. At what point does parental pride turn into a total break from reality and common sense? 49. A business owner complained that professional image files were slowing down his ancient laptop. He accused the photographer of sending virus-filled data on purpose just to be difficult. When told that high-quality files are naturally large, he demanded the photographer buy him a new computer to handle the work. It is amazing how people pay for top-tier quality and then get angry when their Stone Age technology fails. You cannot expect 4K results on a machine that still runs on hopes and dreams. 50. An influencer complained that the professional photos did not match the specific shade of beige on her current Instagram grid. She demanded a free re-edit of the entire gallery because she changed her brand color overnight. She even blamed the photographer for her low engagement, saying the photos were too high quality and made her other posts look bad. Is it even possible to satisfy someone who changes their entire aesthetic every week just for a few extra clicks and likes? 51. A client once paid for a full studio session and then complained the photos looked too professional. They argued that the high-end lighting made their life look fake and demanded the photographer reshoot everything using an old iPhone with a cracked lens. They actually claimed the pro was being elitist by using expensive gear instead of keeping it real. Imagine paying a specialist and then getting angry because they did a better job than you could do on your couch. Would you ever pay for a 5-star meal and then complain it didn't taste like a microwave burrito? 52. Wedding photographers are often treated like furniture, but this story is next level. A couple complained because the photographer left at 10 p.m. as strictly stated in their contract. They were furious he didn't stay until 2 in the morning to capture the drunken after-party for free. They claimed his lack of passion for their love story was insulting and unprofessional. It is a job, not a lifelong commitment to your social life. Why do people think a legal contract is just a suggestion when they are having a good time? 53. A bridesmaid once filed a formal complaint because the photographer refused to digitally change the color of her dress in every single photo. She decided after the wedding that teal didn't suit her skin tone and wanted it changed to a soft rose gold. When told this would cost thousands in labor, she accused the photographer of being a bully and a gatekeeper. She literally expected an artist to spend weeks of their life fixing her own fashion choices for free. Does anyone else think we have reached peak digital delusion with these types of requests? 54. A family once demanded a refund because their dog was looking at a squirrel instead of the camera in a group portrait. They argued the photographer should have used a high-frequency whistle to control the animal's gaze. Never mind that the dog was completely untrained and the kids were also screaming. They actually believed the pro should have a psychic link with domestic pets to ensure a perfect shot. Some people really think a camera lens is a mind control device for the animal kingdom. How much should a photographer be expected to handle before they quit? 55. The most entitled complaint of all comes from the client who hasn't paid their bill but calls every day to ask where their photos are. One woman complained that the delivery delay was ruining her anniversary, despite the fact she had owed the photographer $3,000 for 6 months. Vanna threatened to leave a 1-star review if she did not get the files immediately and for free. The sheer audacity required to demand luxury service while being a total deadbeat is truly the final boss of entitlement. That wraps up the absolute chaos of the professional photography world. It is clear that for some, a camera is expected to be a magic wand that fixes their bad hair days, their bank accounts, and even the weather. The level of entitlement these pros face is truly on another level. But I want to hear from you. Is it ever okay to ask a photographer to edit your face until you look like a different person? Drop your most heated takes in the comments. Smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss more stories about the most absurd behavior on the planet.